Hey there, and welcome to Yarnspirations.com. In possibly one of the cutest videos we have ever done, we're going to make the crochet ice cream cone rattle. Check these out. They have beans in them, so you can crochet, and they're soft for little tiny babies, but also they rattle, which is very cool. And we're going to use safety eyes so that there is no choking hazard, and the other details we're going to embroider on. So lots of moving parts in this pattern. You're going to need the pattern, of course. You're going to need 2 skeins of Bernat Softy Baby. I'm going to use Little Mouse for the cone and Prettiest Pink for the scoop. You're going to need a crochet hook. You're going to need some black embroidery floss and a needle to go with it, a stitch marker, 2 safety eyes with the backs, and again, you want the safety eyes not using buttons or anything like that, because safety eyes, obviously they're called safety eyes, it's so they don't come off and become a choking hazard. We're going to need some fluff, polyfill stuffing, and for the rattle you can use an egg if you have an empty egg that candy came in or something like that. But what I got was these little salad dressing containers. I got these at the grocery store. I got a whole pack of them, and I put some beans inside. You can either use beans or rice. And then the roll of washi tape, I just have a little roll of washi tape. I'm going to tape that closed to make sure that it doesn't pop open so the beans don't come out. Again, you want to be very careful about choking hazards. But all of these little odds and ends pieces I was able to find very easily at the store. So let's take a look at our parts. Now, oddly enough, for a Yarnspirations.com video, I'm not going to do any actual crocheting on camera today because you guys got this. It's very self-evident. You're going to start in the round and work in a spiral. You're going to increase as the pattern tells you, joining the round and chaining one and keeping moving. So you got that little bit of a round join that you can see, but you're going to follow the directions and you're going to end with 36 stitches. Now for the cone, you're going to start at the bottom, work in the round, and work your way up. Once again, we have a little bit of a round join going on here that you can see. And you are also going to end with 36 stitches. Another thing I want to point out is the fabric that we have made. It is relatively tight, meaning use a relatively small hook for the size of the yarn. The reason is we want a nice dense fabric. We want the safety eyes to attach well, and we don't want stuffing leaking out because that is unattractive. So once you have your 2 pieces made, set the cone aside, and we're going to start working on attaching the safety eyes. So the first thing I want to do is find the area where the round joins are. Particularly for single crochet, as you know, there tends to be a slight torque or spiral where the round joins are. So most of us want that to be the back of our critter and not the front. So we're going to put that in the back. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put these little washers down so I don't lose them. Now, until you put the washer in, it's completely reasonable to put these in, take them out, put these in, take them out. So since the bulk of the time that we're using safety eyes, we're putting them on knit or crochet fabric that is very tightly stitched so stuffing doesn't come out. You want to try and get the point of this in a stitch, right in a hole. So I've got him there and I like that. Now if you look at Mr. Ice Cream Cone over here, and you can see that to sort of get that adorable look, you want to space the eyes pretty wide apart. So you can count if you want to. We spaced ours 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches apart, so you can count if you want to. But you don't have to. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to put this way over here. One thing I do want to do though is try and get him in the same row. I want to try and get both eyes in the same row just to make sure that they're level. And say, for example, I didn't like that. I decided they were too far apart or too close together. At this point, it's fine to take them out, move one over. So adjust, keep adjusting until you have them exactly where you want them to be. I am going to put him back though because I kind of liked it over there. All right, so at that point, when I turn it over, I want to make sure that I keep my fingers on the eyeball part to make sure that they don't come out. So next I'm going to grab my washer And you see how there's a flat side and a curved side? I want the flat side toward the fabric. So I'm going to line up the hole and I'm going to press really hard and get these little guys on there. I think I need to put another finger under there. There we go. Now they're going. So you want to keep pressure on both sides and push it down as tight as you can. All right. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Flat side toward, and then I'm going to push, 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 and they're going to lock into place. Once I have those washers under the top row of the eyeball to make sure I have it where I want to have it, I'm going to need to put it against a flat surface like a table. And I'm going to push down really hard with both fingers, and sometimes you can hear it click. Let's see if it'll go. There it is. You heard the click? The click means that it is tightening way up. See how the washer is up tight against the fabric? And once again, that's so these little guys cannot come out. Now that the safety eyes are attached, we're going to work on this little subtle amigurumi smile. Now I'm using black embroidery floss, and that is a 6-strand thread, and I have used all 6 strands, so I have threaded them all 6 in the needle and tied a little knot at the end. I want to make sure that they don't pull out, so even though I have a knot, I'm going to work only in the very back. So I want to make sure that my needle's not poking through to the front, because then you'll see black on the front. We don't want that. I'm just going to grab this little bit of yarn right here. There's my knot, but I'm going to back stitch just through that little bit in the back a couple of times to make sure that with wear the knot doesn't pull out. It's okay if you split the plies. You really just want to anchor that thread down where you can't see it on the front. So now, let's take a look at our model here. So I'm going a couple rows below the eye. Now, even though we have a little smile going on here, I'm going to run the thread straight across, leave a little slack in it, and then come back and tack it down where it curves. So let's take a look at that. In fact, I'm going to leave that right on there so we can see them. So a little bit inside of the eye and a couple of rows down. And in this case, I'm going to try not to split the ply. I'm going to try and get it right in the top of a single crochet if I can manage that. And then I'm going to go straight across to about the same place under the other eye. But again, if I hold him straight like this, he doesn't look happy. So I'm going to bring this down just a little bit and give him a little tack in the center so that he is a smiling, happy ice cream cone. Don't pull too tight yet. You want to make sure there's enough slack in there, and you don't want to pull the whole thing out of shape. So I'm going to put a little tack stitch right there. Give him a happy little expression. And then, in the same way that I did some back stitching when I started, I'm going to just tack it down a couple places in the back. Remember, we don't want this to show through on the front. We want it to A, be sturdy, and B, we want to make sure the knot doesn't come loose. So I'm going to just tack it, tack it, tack it a couple of times. And then I'm going to go back through the loops I already made, like tying an overhand knot. And then I'm going to trim my embroidery thread. Not so close that it comes undone. It's okay if I leave a little bit hanging because it's going to be on the inside when I stuff it. So that is how we do the little embroidered face. The next thing I'm going to do is put stuffing in both of my pieces. I'm going to stuff them up separately, and then I will crochet the cone to the scoop. So what I'm doing here is going through the polyfill and breaking up any clumps that might be there. I'm trying to make it smooth and neat because you don't want your little stuffed guy to be lumpy. So if you see a big lump in there, use your fingers and pry it apart, because once it's all sewn up, of course. Now on the ice cream cone particularly, use your thumb and make sure you get some stuffing way into the tippy point, because once it's all sewn together you won't be able to get back in there. And you want to stuff these nice and fat, but not so fat that stuffing is oozing out the side. So once again, just go through, break up the lumps. If you spin, it's almost like carding. You want to just make sure there's not a big ugly ball of fiber that is going to make your little guy lumpy. And just pulling apart the fibers so that they have as much loft as possible. And I'm going to keep stuffing. And I'm not worried about ends. I didn't weave in ends on the cone. I didn't weave in ends on the scoop at the beginning, because it's going to be inside, and so nobody's going to be able to tug on it. And then I have some, my yarn is still attached on the outside because I'm going to use that to finish things up. I think that scoop could use, or the ice cream cone could use just a little bit more. All right, once again, fill it up, but make sure nothing's pooking out, you know, in a lumpy way. Smooth it out, really take your time, making sure that you have it where you want it, because once the two pieces are attached, it's not easy to get in there. So there's my cone all stuffed up. And it's okay if a little bit is poking out the top. I'll take care of that when I join them. Now for the scoop, we want to put some polyfill in first, but then we're going to put in the little rattle that we made. Let me grab some more fiber here. It's very hard to see my white fiber on my white background. All right, so we're going to keep pulling that all apart and stuff evenly. But once I get part of it in there, I'm going to put my little rattle in. Now you might remember I showed you at the beginning, this is a 2-ounce salad dressing cup that I got at the grocery store, and I used just some washi tape to hold it together. You could use electrical tape or duct tape or scotch tape or whatever you have laying around. And I filled it with dried pinto beans. You can use any kind of beans, plastic pellets if you have plastic pellets, if you make other kind of soft toys and use those for weights, or you could use rice. And you may notice I didn't fill it all the way up because you want the rattle to make noise. And if it's full, they don't have enough room to move. So now I'm going to slide this guy right in there. So I want the stuffing on the top to keep his head nice and soft. And then I'm going to put my rattle part in. And now I'm going to stuff around the rattle. Once again, you don't have to use this little 2-ounce guy. If you have, I've seen people use the insides of Kinder eggs, any kind of little tiny container. Sometimes around the spring holidays you can find candy in little tiny plastic containers, but just tape it up so the beans or the rice or what have you don't come out. So once again, I'm just pulling the fibers apart so I don't have ugly lumps. And then I'm going to put this in here, but I'm going to put it around my plastic container so that the rattle is soft on the outside, so that there's polyfill between all of the plastic and the hand of whoever's playing with the rattle, because you might think it might be a child all the time. But all of my neighbors who have seen this have wanted to come play with it themselves. So I'm going to stuff all the way around. Same thing as the bottom. I want to make sure there's no lumps, but see, that's sort of a dent. It means there's not enough stuffing back there. So I want to make sure I get more in there. Really, really take your time and make sure that you are happy with how your little guy looks. Once I'm happy with how the scoop looks, I'm going to join it to the cone. So I'm going to go back to where my round join was. I never ended it off, I just left a nice long live loop. If you're worried about it coming unraveled while you're doing your stuffing and whatnot, you can always put a locking stitch marker on there. And then I'm going to get my stuffed cone, and I'm going to line up the round join of the cone with the round join of the scoop. Is it a deal breaker? It is not, but it just keeps all that round join mess in the back. So following the instructions on the pattern, I'm going to single crochet all the way around. Remember, we ended the scoop with 36 stitches and we ended the cone with 36 stitches. So I'm going to single crochet all the way around, and it says through all thicknesses. So there's my chain one at the beginning of the round. And by which I mean I want both legs of the scoop and also both legs of the cone. Now, this looks a little fiddly. It's easier to go as you get moving. But you can see you're going through both legs of the pink stitch and both legs of the mouse colored stitch, and you're going to single crochet all the way around, joining the top to the bottom. Now, as you start getting some of these stitches in there, you can pretty much constantly go in there and readjust your stuffing. Squish in anything that came out. Try one more time to make sure you don't have any lumps. And you want to crochet this nice and tightly so that it holds together neatly. But as you can see, that polyfill really wants to come out. So this takes a little bit of time, but it's worth doing properly. So since there's the same amount of stitches on both the cone and the scoop, they will line up exactly opposite each other. Okay, let's take a look at that. So you see, here's our little ridge. We're just joining one to the other. We're going to go all the way around, again, using our thumbs to stuff that stuffing in as we go. And then after that is all finished, we're going to join the round with a slip stitch in the first single crochet. And then there's one more round that goes around of this little shell stitch, and that gives us our little frilled edge on the scoop. So thank you so much for joining us here, making our ice cream scoop rattles. I love these little things. I can see myself making a ton of them in my future. We look forward to seeing you again soon here on Yarnspirations.com.